Hello, this is Ian, Somerset News Network. What a weekend, eh? Reform held a conference, which is more like a rally, I would say, at the NEC. I've been watching some of the speeches, and I got to admit, I agree with everything that was said. I don't like the way Reform treated Rupert Lowe or Stephen. I think they're totally out of order there. I've been sort of doing some research on my local Reform candidate. He is a Greek Cypriot, and he's more British than most of the woke lefty Labour Party are. If he stands at the next election and he's not pushed out, because Reform have now got a new section for vetting candidates, and if you don't fit the mould, you'll be out. My view is that Reform has got to be reformed. It's got to be able to embrace people that may not think all the same thing they do. You don't have to be reformed 100%, but you do have to be reformed at least 90 or 95%. Everybody doesn't agree on everything, and if there's one item you don't disagree with, Reform are going to push you out. Reform has got to say that they're willing to have core values, but would accept dialogue, debate on other issues. And we're not getting that. The policies are coming from the leaders. It was good that they had Lucy Connolly at the conference. Rally. I'm going to call it a rally because it wasn't really a conference. I've done conferences. When I was a union rep for the civil service, we went down to Brighton for a conference over a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Oh, what an education that was. Now you've got to remember that it's a civil service and it's a civil service union. So everybody around me is what they would now call woke. Trendy, lefty, communists. They read The Guardian and The Socialist Worker. You know, fish out water? You bet. But I kept my mouth shut, kept my head down, and I'm representing my members. And we were on the technical side of the union. So although people were grade 7s in the union, I wasn't a grade 7, I was an AO, but a lot of the technical grades were members of my union. So they were engineers and architects and lawyers, and I got on well with them. And they said to me, they don't understand why I haven't got a more important job. And I said, well, it was the job they offered me and I took it. You know, I used to advise the wildlife section on countryside and firearms law. And when you advise in the civil service and you make a note, it's called a minute. And it's on an A5 piece of paper. This is all before we had computers, by the way. This is in the early 90s. And the only people that had computers were the accountants and the grade 3s. And there was a secretary pool of about 10 or 12 girls in a long office with one desk after another. And they had computerized typewriters, electrical typewriters. And if you wrote a letter, you'd write the letter out, you put it in a grid, it would go to the secretaries, they would type it up on headed notepaper, or if you wanted a draft, you just put draft on the top and they'd send it back typing. You'd give it to your EO and he would check it and they'd edit it. Make sure you put the spelling right. And then it'd go back to the typing pool to be typed up. Brilliant. They were ever so nice girls. Anyway, the technical grades couldn't understand why I was only an AO. And I said, well, I'm not a civil servant. I said, I'm here because I was unemployed for 3 months. And they were taking on unemployed people. That's how I ended up being a civil servant. I did the civil service test, but because I didn't have the qualifications to back it up, they wouldn't give me a better job. So, and I lasted 6 years as a civil servant, and I did at times become a temporary EO and got paid for it. Not very often, but I was an EO occasionally. Anyway, when we were at conference, we're sat there, and it is woke. That's the only way to describe it. It's like a different world. On the Friday night, they had a party. And it was the gay and lesbian party. And the guy I went with, who was normally in a suit and tie, who was the head secretary of the union within the Southwest, said, don't be surprised if you see me in a dress tonight. I just thought I'd tell you so you're not shocked. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, he said, are you coming to the party? And I said, no. I'm going to give that a miss. You know? And I was going to go to the pub, you know, along the seafront. Anyway, I went into the bar over the hotel, and there he is, sat on the stool with half a pint, in a dress. Oh. Well, you can't make this up, can you? What do I say? He said, hello. He said, you want to come to the party? I said, no, that's all right. I'll give it a miss. I'm going down the pub. So anyway, that was my experience of going to conference. Anyway, now you've got the Reform conference, which I would call a rally, because the members from the floor couldn't speak by the looks of it. It was done by speeches. Now, the way the union conference worked was that you had an agenda. So very much like the Labour Party conference. That's more managed, though. Anyway, you had 2 dioceses and you could speak for a motion or against a motion. Very few people talked against a motion, which is what I was going to do. And they wanted to use union money to go to things like Gaza and Rwanda and all sorts of places like that. And I said, my argument was that our members pay money to the union to look after their interests. And sending money abroad, although you might agree with it, is not the honest way to use members' money, and it ought to be used at home. My branch agreed to it. I didn't believe it when I saw it. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, it's my turn up next to have my great speech. And what they did is they got all these agendas, right? Giving Ireland back to the Irish, you know, all the standard woke things of the 90s, you know. Legalizing cannabis was another one. Anyway, it was timed And the motion before ran over time. And they allowed it to run over time. So somebody got up and spoke for the motion, and I was in line and I was next to go up, and they put the guillotine down on it. They would not let me speak. And that happened on the second time I was going to go up. Exactly the same thing happened. But that one, they had 2 or 3 people talk for the motion. I was there going to talk against the motion, basically saying the union, I can't remember what it was over. I said the union can't go against British law, and we can't contradict British law if it's lawful in this country. Can't remember what the subject was, but that was the basic premise of it. And I got to the end. I got to the front of the line to go up and speak. Time out again. So those motions were never carried. They were never part of the union policy. So I suppose I won in a way, but that's not happening at the Reform Party conference. They are telling us, if you're a Reform member, what they're going to do. We agree with most of it. Now, my wife noticed this. I'm going to admit I didn't notice this. My wife noticed that Miss Norris, when she came on stage, the ex-Tory MP, the crowd were very quiet. And the camera flashed round a couple of times. And they did not look happy. We saw it a second time. And Pat said, look, they're not taking warmly to her. I don't know why that is. I've been trying to find out. I've been on social media. I've seen a couple of rants, and I can't mention what they said here. Hello. But then Anne Widdecombe came on stage. And they love Anne Widdecombe. She was a Tory minister. She was the Home Secretary. She knows her stuff. There's a couple of things I, don't like Anne for, but that's one of these things. I said, you agree with people 95% of the time. At 5%, I don't agree with Anne on certain subjects. Well, this is what Reform has got to take on. It can't be a one-size-fits-all. It's got to be able to take on other people. How can they bring on Labour Party supporters, Labour Party voters, and Tory voters? And they got to take what they call the middle ground. And Farage is doing his best not to sound far right, but he's saying that he wants to fight for us, for the British people. He says he's going to stop the boats within 2 weeks. I've got no problems with that. I'd like to stop it tomorrow. Now, we come to Rachel Reeves. What an interesting weekend it's been for Rachel Reeves. I've heard a thing. No, not a word. Rachel from accounts, absolutely quiet. So we'll forget her. Then we've got Angela Rayner. Oh. And the flat fiasco. Now, as far as I understand, please put a comment down below if you know what's happening. But you've got all these commentators trying to explain what's happened. Now, picking out and picking bits and trying to fit it together and understand what's going on. Now then, Angela Rayner's son is disabled. And she said he was a miracle child and thanked the NHS for it. She then got compensation from the NHS for her son. So something must have gone wrong. Or was it one of these freebie fiddle type things? I don't know. Anyway, the money is in a trust fund, and that's for her son. Obviously, she's a trustee for it, by the sounds of it. Now, she's got a house up north, well, I think it's Manchester. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the commentators are now saying that she got paid from the trust half the value of the house. So she's the trustee, she's in charge of that money, she's given the money to herself as 50% of the house. And they're saying houses in that area, on the same road, the same size, are going for around 500,000. Her house was valued at over 600,000. So did she inflate the price of her house and pay herself more than half the value? So she could then buy this £800,000 flat by the seaside. As a trustee for the trust, and the money is for her son, is she allowed to pay herself? I just posed the question. It just seems very odd. I don't know if it's within the law or not. Oh, and she didn't pay the £4,000 stamp duty on the flat. But that's her sole residence now because she doesn't own the house in Manchester or wherever it is. Now, it might be technically legal, but one, she's the housing minister, and two, she's the deputy prime minister. With all the Labour screaming and shouting about Tory sleaze before the election. All they went on about was Tory sleaze. And that collapsed the Conservative Party vote. In my constituency, the Tory party vote was down 5,000 votes. And that's Labour. That's what it's done. We have a Labour MP. The Labour MP really didn't make any headroads. They just withheld their vote. I think it was something like 1% extra from the previous election. But by default, he won. The Conservative crashed out. Now, if people aren't going to vote Labour, like they didn't vote Tory at the last election, that will give Reform a chance. Now, I've had a chat with the Reform guy. I like him. Like I said, he's a Greek Cypriot. He came here to study in university, got a job and stayed. And he thinks more British than the woke Labour Party members. I like the guy. So what I'm trying to say is at the next election that I could be voting for my local Reform candidate. I'm not going to be a member of Reform, but I will vote for my Reform Party candidate because I like the guy. And what we've got to do is get Reform Party candidates that think like we do. I think we're going to get rid of the Labour Party. We can't handle another 4 years of this. They're saying that there could be an election within 2 years. I'm hoping it's before that. Oh, oh, this is a cracker. Labour are saying that the economy is in the bad state it's in because of Liz Truss. Liz Truss was there for 14 days. She was here and gone. She was going to do a budget and it was rejected, so she resigned. And it was status quo. Labour won the election and they've been now in 14 months and they have crashed the economy. Labour is to blame. Tories may not have been doing any better, but they didn't crash the economy. So, what do I think? I think Labour are going to try and blame the Tories for the financial mess that they are in. And we can see through it. We don't trust them. They lie. They cheat. They're on all these freebies. They're more sleaze than the old Conservatives were. That's why I am going to vote Reform. Not that I'm going to be a Reform member. I was going to be, but because I backed Tommy Robinson, they won't allow me to be a member. I wish I could go on Saturday, September the 13th, to London, to the rally that's there, to uphold our rights and freedoms. I'm with you, lads, anybody that's going. I just wish I could get there, but it's just impossible. I want to be there, I tell you. Yeah, I'd love to be there. Fly me flag. I got me flag already. Got me t-shirt. Yeah, bought the t-shirt, got the flag, ready to go. And I can't get there. Anyway, never mind about that. Anyway, this is Ian. I've done 20 minutes. That's long enough. You can't stand me for much more, can you? Bye-bye for now.